Welcome to the city of Talsville, where people walk to an arena to watch our nerdy protagonist battle. And look, apparently our hero is quite famous, seeing as he's on a billboard holding a bag of Diamonds chips. So, a crowd gathers and goes wild inside the Soulfland FC stadium. And well, the stadium announcer begins to introduce the participants, the main star of today, the MVP of the 6th and 7th World Championships. This is Lee Tae-ho. Now, inside the arena, barbarian warriors gather in front of our protagonist. Then they comment about Lee Tae-ho. One of them finds the name unusual, and another observes that his clothes are also unusual and that he is very small. The two barbarians look at each other surprised. Then suddenly, the bald barbarian gets angry and asks if it was the red-haired barbarian who killed him. The other barbarian then laughs and calls him a brute, saying that it was he himself, wondering if it's really him. Then the two brutes prepare to brawl, and seeing that, Lee Tae-ho starts to sweat. Our hero then wonders what is happening because suddenly the barbarians started fighting. He questions if they were enemies who fought on the same battlefield. The barbarians stare at each other furiously, emanating their powerful auras. Suddenly, the two greet each other by crossing their arms. The red-haired barbarian then says that he knows the bald barbarian only made it to Valhalla because of him. Then, the bald barbarian says that was a beautiful battle and asks if he died right after. The red-haired barbarian then recounts that he was killed by a boy with hair divided into 5 braids. He was yelling for his father while stabbing him in the stomach. The bald barbarian is then surprised, but soon celebrates, saying that Bjorn avenged his father. The redhead congratulates him for raising his son so well that he will be a great warrior. The redhead then praises him even more and says that in fact he already is an excellent warrior. Lee Tae-ho, still confused, freezes and wonders how he ended up in that crazy place. So, settle into your seats because we'll go back a bit to the past. A euphoric crowd shouts for Tae-ho. Next, we see Lee Tae-ho playing video games with his headphones on. He was about to win the World Championship for the 3rd time in a row, but suddenly, our hero slams his keyboard. Lee wonders how he died at that moment. While screaming, desperate, he questions if it isn't a dream. Then, a Valkyrie appears and extends her hand to him, saying that he was a champion, the only one who won all the individual duels, more than 12 battles. Then, suddenly, the barbarians celebrate, calling him champion and king of duels. They comment that he is small but impressive. He must have good skills. One of the warriors says he wants to face him. The Valkyrie then points to Lee Tae-ho, who is completely wide-eyed, seeing everyone cheering him. Then, Lee Tae-ho starts to break out in a cold sweat. Then, Lee realizes that everything happened because of the Valkyrie, by the way. Why the hell is she winking at me? So, while Lee Tae-ho remains fainted in his chair, his colleagues try to help him. And well, actually, our hero wasn't down or anything. His soul had simply left his body. Lee then looks at his unconscious body and wonders if that really is his body. Suddenly, Lee Tae-ho is struck by a very strong lightning bolt. Then, a Valkyrie descends from the heavens and says that the soul of a warrior who lost his life in a glorious battle after a long battle. Meanwhile, Lee Tae-ho wonders, am I dead? Soon after, the Valkyrie asks Lee to go with her. Then he asks where, and soon despairs, asking if it is to hell. Then the Valkyrie asks for his hand. He gives it to her and is soon pulled by her as she flies through a magic portal. The Valkyrie guides him to Valhalla. Lee is surprised by the name of the place and his eyes widen. Then, the beam of light reaches the heavens and disappears in the clouds. And well, that's how our hero ended up in that place. Now in the present, Lee Tae-ho remembers that Valhalla is the afterlife of Norse mythology, a place you can only go if you die as a warrior. He then reflects that he learned this in a game, so he wonders if the Valkyrie mistook him for a great warrior, since she seemed confident. Our hero then apologizes to her because he is not a true warrior, but a professional gamer, a person who plays video games. The Valkyrie then asks if by games he means battles and duels. Lee Tae-ho immediately denies and asks to be returned to where he came from. A barbarian then blows a horn, and then the Valkyrie announces an enemy attack and orders everyone to prepare for battle. Lee Tae-ho panics at the insane situation. Outside, an army of monsters approaches. There's even the wolf from the Puss in Boots movie if you look closely. Then, the battle between the barbarians and the monsters begins. The red-haired barbarian lands a blow right on the weapon of one of the monsters. As the battle continues, Lee Tae-ho despairs. Wondering what kind of madness this is, he wonders what he should do. After all, he has never even held a real sword. Lee Tae-ho wonders what happens if he dies in that place. Soon after, a gigantic monster appears in front of our hero. Then, the bodybuilder wolf quickly strikes with his axe. Lee Tae-ho is paralyzed with fear. But suddenly, a barbarian appears behind our protagonist and saves him from the attack. He orders the young man to get down. Then, the barbarian uses his skill, the stone fist that captured a bear, to crush the monster. The barbarian then asks Lee Tae-ho if he knows nothing about Saga. And well, while the barbarian remains wide-eyed, Lee Tae-ho wonders what the hell Saga is. The barbarian then wonders how he doesn't know about Saga. After all, for him to have come to Valhalla means to have become a story, that is, for having some widely known accomplishments from his life. The barbarian then explains that here, your accomplishments are your strength, and the more recognized they are, the stronger a warrior you will become. Hearing this, Lee Tae-ho reflects on his accomplishments. Without remembering anything significant, our hero starts to break out in a cold sweat. Lee Tae-ho starts to panic and states that he only ate and played video games. Then, a well-armed knight comes to his mind. He then wonders if maybe he could take advantage of the achievements he got with his game character. Suddenly, our hero starts to energize. Then, a bright blue aura emanates from his hands. Surprised, he wonders what that is. The barbarian smiles and states that Lee Tae-ho really has a saga. Then he asks if the young man can see the letters of light in front of him. Lee Tae-ho confirms that he can read the letters, even without recognizing the language. He compares the experience to using an image translator. Then, a notification appears. Saga, Immortal Warrior, synchronization rate with Kalstead, 1%. Meanwhile, our hero strikes an epic pose, and well, right behind him, the barbarian watches the boy trying to understand what the hell that is. Lee Tae-ho then states that the title Immortal Warrior belongs to Kalstead. However, he wonders what would happen if he could use Kalstead's power. Lee Tae-ho smiles and brags, claiming to be the strongest in the world. Then suddenly, the barbarian yells for him to look ahead. Lee Tae-ho, wide-eyed, faces a gigantic enemy. The beast, with glowing red eyes, raises its club to attack. Then the monster starts the battle by delivering its blow first. But Lee Tae-ho quickly dodges the enemy's attack. The impact is so great that the ground around it is split in half. Our hero starts to skid, rolling over and over again. Until then, Lee Tae-ho manages to get up quickly. Our hero shows difficulty controlling Kalstead's power. Lee Tae-ho questions if he is really that weak. Then he states that Kalstead would defeat the enemy easily. Lee Tae-ho wonders if there is any problem with the saga. Then the notification appears again. Saga, Immortal Warrior, synchronization, rate with Kalstead, 1%. Lee Tae-ho adjusts his glasses, still trying to understand what that means. Our hero then explodes in fury and asks if this is some kind of insurance, asking them to write in bigger letters. The barbarian watches and considers him an amusing fellow. The barbarian then says that's the most he can help, and that this is not the end of the saga, encouraging Lee Tae-ho to continue writing his own story. He introduces himself as Bjorn and says goodbye, wishing Lee Tae-ho survival so they can meet again. Our hero then observes the monster again and thinks that just 1% of Kalstead's power is more than enough. Meanwhile, he propels himself to his sword that remains stuck in the ground. Even 1% is more than enough. He runs towards the enemy, preparing to take his sword back. Meanwhile, he remembers that Kalstead was a superhuman who faced hundreds of soldiers alone. Then, with the sword already in hand, he holds it firmly and skids across the ground. Lee Tae-ho, amid that chaotic scenario, raises his guard and calls the wolf to fight. The beast, in turn, roars and advances with its club. Lee Tae-ho then thinks about the legend that he and Kalstead will create together. With a determined look, Lee Tae-ho prepares to dodge that swift attack. The beast kicks up dust and is surprised that it didn't hit our hero. Lee Tae-ho, in a rather stylish way, appears behind the wolf. The beast roars, frustrated with his speed. Then, a crowd shouts for Tae-ho! Kalstead, with a blue aura emanating from his body, prepares to attack. He shouts, unleashing his Tempest attack. And he completes, saying that he will sweep away enemies like a tempest, because this is Lee Tae-ho's famous Kalstead. Then, Lee Tae-ho, with his eyes shining intensely, focuses and charges at the beast, which quickly loses its head. Lee Tae-ho then tries to stop running after using all that speed. Our hero starts to roll over and break small pieces of rock as he rolls non-stop. Lee Tae-ho then finally lands, and as the beast's body gushes blood non-stop, he wonders if remembering an achievement adds a new saga. He states that this ability is probably a movement speed boost. Lee Tae-ho then decides that with that saga ability, he will surely survive. Then some time passes, and in a large hall, 3 warriors toast and shout, "Skal!" The red-haired barbarian celebrates their survival, while the bald barbarian states that for him it was all just a warm-up. Meanwhile, Lee Tae-ho savors an incredible piece of meat. He wonders if that is the evening banquet, commenting that they only serve alcohol and meat. But as he is extremely hungry, he decides to eat. Suddenly, Bjorn approaches and says that if Lee Tae-ho wants better food, he must increase his warrior class. Bjorn explains that this is the banquet where the lower-class warriors and newcomers gather, and that's why the food and drink are like that. Lee Tae-ho then wonders if Bjorn is also a lower-class warrior. Bjorn then replies that he just came down to see Lee Tae-ho. Lee Tae-ho thanks Bjorn for saving him and says that if he hadn't told him about the saga, he probably wouldn't have survived. Suddenly saying that, our hero freezes. Thoughtful, he wonders what would happen if he died there. Then, Bjorn explains that the souls of the dead in Valhalla are transferred to the Steel Warriors. They feel no pain or hunger and can fight forever. Bjorn asks if it isn't wonderful. Lee Tae-ho despairs and yells, stating that it would be a steel coffin, not a warrior's life. Then, he concludes that he cannot die there at all. While Lee Tae-ho despairs, Bjorn warns that his affiliation will soon be determined. Lee Tae-ho, confused, questions what he means by affiliation. Bjorn, in turn, warns that it's about to begin. Then, a Valkyrie in armor walks towards the center of the place. She addresses the warriors, saying that she saw their deeds that day, and that she will now say to which legion each one will belong. Lee Tae-ho wonders who that Valkyrie is. Bjorn then explains that she is Ragnarok, daughter of Odin of noble blood. Then she raises her sword and asks everyone to look at their own cups, for there they will see the name of those they will follow and trust. Bjorn then reveals that they all belong to the Legion of the Gods of Asgard, and that they will gain even more power from the god who chooses them. Lee Tae-ho then thinks that if he can gain power, he would like a powerful god. But the only Norse gods he knows are Odin and Thor. Lee Tae-ho then takes his mug and begs for Odin or Thor to come out. Then a Valkyrie with red hair and golden eyes holding an apple appears. Now Lee Tae-ho and she are on a boat, sailing on a river surrounded by trees. Lee Tae-ho questions what is happening, as he thought this was the Legion of the Gods. Then, confused and frustrated, he wonders why this happened to him. The girl, in turn, states that he is like that all the time. Lee Tae-ho then thinks he's the only one there. She tells him not to worry, as their legion has its strengths and will not lose to the others. She adds, saying that no one bothers from above and no one causes problems to those below. Our hero then wonders if this isn't paradise. He questions if he really is the only one in Idun's legion. Then we return to the moment when our protagonist was chosen by Idun. Lee Tae-ho, sitting at the table with Bjorn, is astonished to see his mug. Our hero then sees the name Idun shining on it. Meanwhile, the warriors celebrate, shouting names like Thor, Odin, and Tr. Zrania, a barbarian, excitedly exclaims that he got it for his mom. Meanwhile, Bjorn observes Lee Tae-ho, who still holds the mug completely frozen. Intrigued, our hero states that Idun is a name he doesn't recognize. Lee Tae-ho then stares at Bjorn, wide-eyed and sweat dripping down his face. Bjorn then stares at Lee Tae-ho and tells him to stay strong. Our hero questions the meaning of that ambiguous expression. "Is he mocking me?" asks our protagonist. Suddenly, a white-haired Valkyrie excitedly exclaims, "Odin!" She announces that those affiliated with Odin should go to her. Then, a group of warriors gathers, responding to the calls of Odin, Tyr, and Freya. And well, there's our hero, Lee Tae-ho, walking towards the Valkyrie. Trying to find her, he repeats the name, Idun, Idun. Suddenly, Lee Tae-ho freezes. Our protagonist's goddess finally appears, and crouching down with her eyes closed and cleaning her ear with her finger, she whispers her name. Then, she faces our hero. Lee Tae-ho scratches his head, embarrassed, and calls for Idun. The girl, in turn, stares at him without saying a single word. Then, our hero informs her that he is part of her legion. The girl reacts with surprise, widening her eyes and opening her mouth. She then asks if Lee Tae-ho is a newbie. Then she exclaims, "It can't be! Seriously?" The girl, excited, asks how long it has been since they had a newbie. Lee Tae-ho, visibly nervous, holds his breath. Our hero says that she is too close, and then she introduces herself. Her name is Hedda. Now back on the boat, Lee Tae-ho questions her about the reason they are fighting and why they are in that war. Our hero then stares at her, waiting for an answer. Hedda then finally decides to explain the situation to Lee Tae-ho, so she shows Lee Tae-ho what the world looks like, explaining that they are in Asgard. Then she points to Muspelheim and says that there, giants, evil gods, and beasts are invading. Lee Tae-ho, curious, asks what the red part is. The Valkyrie then explains that the red part is Eren, a place that has already fallen, and that they are now on the front lines of a war against enemies who want to destroy the world. Lee Tae-ho, shocked, asks if it would be Ragnarok. He states that he has seen this in a game. After that, the redhead stares at our hero. Hedda then confirms that they are going through Ragnarok, fighting for the fate of the world, but honestly, it's more about surviving. Lee Tae-ho, surprised, wonders if it is possible to travel between different worlds. If he can, it means he can return to the world he came from. Then, Hedda and Lee Tae-ho finally reach their destination. Hedda explains that this is the goddess's temple. She says that, as they are warriors, they must pay their respects. As they walk through the temple, Lee Tae-ho asks if they will really see the goddess there. Not directly, but from a distance then, the girl explains that the goddess resides in a higher place. Arriving at the altar, the redhead asks Lee Tae-ho to stand on it and drop the apple. Lee Tae-ho, confused, holds the golden apple. Then Lee Tae-ho carefully throws the apple on the ground. Suddenly, a bright light emanates from the altar. Our hero is startled. Then Idun finally appears and with open arms calls Lee Tae-ho her warrior and asks him to come closer. Lee Tae-ho, with shining eyes, covers his face with his arm. Lee Tae-ho, in awe, stares at the goddess. Then nervously he bows and places his hand on his chest. Then the goddess pours a wave of energy over Lee Tae-ho. Our hero states that his body has become naturally respectful, like water flowing from top to bottom. Idun then grants her blessing to Lee Tae-ho, saying that she will protect his body from the danger of death. Suddenly, a shining symbol appears on Lee Tae-ho's body, the seal of life, Idun's blessing. Then, our hero, surprised by the power, asks what that is. Suddenly, he feels a wave of energy run through his body and exclaims that youth is strength. He realizes that his chronic back pain and carpal tunnel syndrome, a result of being a professional gamer, the stiffness in his neck, indigestion, and all the other symptoms have completely disappeared. Then Idun watches him and says that she looks forward to his future contributions. And well, Lee Tae-ho falls to the ground. Hedda warns that he has received the blessing. Our hero stares at her, dumbfounded. Hedda explains that Idun is the goddess of eternal youth and longevity. On the battlefield, Lee Tae-ho may suffer excruciating pain, but in fact, it is almost impossible to die with the blessing of life. As Lee Tae-ho grows, the blessing will also become stronger. That's why their legion is nicknamed the Zombie Legion. Our hero then stares at her. Suddenly, he asks her if, when they defeat all the enemies, he can return to the place where he lived. Lee Tae-ho brags that now he looked pretty cool and that any girl would fall in love. Hedda looks at him and says he is cute. Then, she confirms that if the war ends, of course, if they win, Lee Tae-ho can return if he wishes. Our hero then says that of course he wants to go home. There is no joy in staying in that insane place. Suddenly, Hedda holds Lee Tae-ho's hand. Our hero then blushes, saying that her hand is so warm and soft. He then thinks that for now, maybe there is some fun in that place. So, some time passes, and our hero begins to imagine happy moments with Hedda. Lee Tae-ho arrives home from work. types the code into the electronic door lock, and Hedda, wearing an apron, runs to him with a ladle in her hand. She says he arrived just in time. Hedda then offers Lee Tae-ho a spoonful of meat to taste. Our hero smiles at the sight of the succulent food his wife has prepared. Then, with shining eyes, he prepares to eat. And well, back to reality. Lee Tae-ho bites into a shoe. Then, he snaps back to his senses. Lee Tae-ho says that thanks to that tough, shoe leather-like meat, he finally snapped out of his delusion. Hedda then asks if he's all right, and embarrassed, she asks him if the meat is too tough. She laughs and tells him to work hard and increase his class, because if Lee Tae-ho's class rises, he'll be treated better, with better food and accommodation. The redhead encourages him. After that, our hero starts daydreaming about Hedda again, this time with a baby, imagining himself as a happy family man. The system then warns that Lee Tae-ho's delusions have reached a critical level. Then some time passes, and Hedda says she'll summarize, explaining that every time Lee Tae-ho defeats an enemy, he gains something called a rune. Then, Lee Tae-ho remembers feeling like a red energy was being absorbed by his body. Hedda says he probably has some runes too. Lee Tae-ho asks if he can invest those runes he obtains in skills to become stronger. Hedda replies that's exactly it. Strength, vigor, and agility are simple, but what about mana and willpower? Asks our hero. She then explains that mana strengthens his magic and increases his magical defense, while willpower increases his concentration and mental defense. Lee Tae-ho says he'll have to be content with that for now. Then he asks if sagas can also be strengthened by mana. Hedda explains that sagas are special, so increasing stats won't make them stronger. The more you know the story and the stronger your belief, the more powerful it becomes. Sometimes a saga can become stronger than reality, like a story about capturing a large snake that can become a legend about slaying a dragon. The sagas of lower-class warriors are simple, usually revolving around getting stronger or faster, which is also amazing, but it's not a true saga. Sagas are the materialization of legends, so their effects are truly diverse. They can create weapons, transform, or even summon armies. Hedda then asks Lee Tae-ho to remember one thing: the power to invoke a saga and develop it depends entirely on him. Upon hearing this, Lee Tae-ho recalls and projects his story, the legend of the Dragon Knight Kalstead. Suddenly, the village bell begins to ring. Hedda asks if Lee Tae-ho understood the ringing bell is an order to go to battle. Lee Tae-ho questions how quickly things work in that place. Suddenly, a portal appears in front of them. Lee Tae-ho, surprised, watches the purple hole forming. The redhead explains that when he passes through the violet portal, he will find the deployment area, where everyone gathers before going to the battlefield. And well, a short time passes, and Lee Tae-ho finally dresses as a warrior. The girl helping him says that everything is ready, just in time. Then, Hedda says that the outfit looks great on him, while our hero, completely flushed, holds his breath. Our hero then says goodbye, but before he goes, Hedda calls him. Our hero quickly looks at her, and then she tells him not to die. Upon hearing this, our hero starts to tremble all over, but then he replies that she herself said it's difficult to die, and thanks her for Idun's blessing. And well, there goes Lee Tae-ho walking towards the portal. Suddenly, Lee Tae-ho teleports, and upon arriving on the battlefield, our hero admires the incredible crowd of warriors. Lee Tae-ho then wonders if all of this is some great battle. Suddenly, Bjorn slaps him on the back and calls him. Our hero is startled. Bjorn greets him and says that he looks better now. Then he asks if the Valkyrie responsible for him is a beauty. Lee Tae-ho is embarrassed by Bjorn's question. Then the brute laughs and says that all Valkyries are beautiful. Then he pushes Lee Tae-ho and tells him to hurry up and find his legion, as today's battle will have a commander, unlike yesterday. Meanwhile, Ragnar introduces himself and soon asks if Lee Tae-ho is Idun's warrior. He says it's strange that Lee Tae-ho is alone like that, and then orders him to go to the back. Lee Tae-ho, somewhat awkwardly, obeys. Ragnar then introduces himself and says he will lead them in battle today. The objective is to recover the territory lost to the Knolls, so they will position themselves right in the middle of the battlefield. Ragnar then encourages the warriors of Valhalla, saying they will fight for Asgard and the 9 realms. Then they begin to cross the portal. Ragnar states that he always leads on the front lines and asks them to follow his back. The warriors then begin to praise Ragnar, saying that he is trustworthy and that those are the shoulders of a real man. Lee Tae-ho, nervous, says that he can't see anything. Suddenly, Lee Tae-ho and the warriors arrive on the battlefield, a hostile and completely frozen environment. Then, the warriors spot the enemies and prepare to fight. One of the warriors shouts that reinforcements are arriving. Ragnar, excited, says that's great and asks them to advance. Suddenly, the warriors are startled by something. A grotesquely muscular creature appears in front of them. The warriors wonder what the hell that is. Then, the creature leaps forward. The beast tears apart a large part of the barbarians on the front lines. And well, this giant white-fanged wolf is the boss, White Fang. Lee Tae-ho, impressed, says that's intense and realizes that the giant wolf is the leader of the enemies. Our hero states that he is huge, 4 to 5 times bigger than the others. The bald warrior then gets angry and asks if they are just going to chat. Then, finally, leader Ragnar's portal begins to open. Then he orders everyone to advance and attack. The warriors then advance, led by Ragnar. But as they get close to the wolf, the warriors are frightened by the creature's size and ask what the hell that is. Then, the boss White Fang lunges at the warriors and strikes them all with his enormous hammer. Then, Lee Tae-ho appears in front of his portal. Lee Tae-ho faces the beast, which growls and slobbers all over our hero. And well, now it's time for the fight everyone has been waiting for, the boss White Fang versus our incredible, and weighing an insane 50 kilos, Lee Tae-ho. Our hero then states that he needs to calm down, that he should think of it as a strategy against a game boss. Lee Tae-ho then calculates his plan. He states that first of all, he needs to dodge the attack. And well, the wolf's hammer is getting closer and closer. Our hero watches that thing approaching and thinks about how big it is. One simple hit, and it would be over for him. He then imagines his shield in pieces. Lee Tae-ho states that with that tiny shield, he wouldn't be able to block the attack. So in that case, he decides to use all 5 runes he has to invest in agility. Then, he focuses and watches the enemy's attack. Lee Tae-ho says he can see it, and then dodges the beast's attack, and everyone around is surprised by the boy's dodging speed. Then, White Fang growls furiously and attacks again, wiping out all the dummies who stop to watch the fight. White Fang roars again. Lee Tae-ho then dodges the debris caused by the monster and runs away. Our hero thinks that just dodging is useless. Lee Tae-ho then decides to aim for the beast's legs, and yells for everyone to aim for the enemy's legs to stop him, but to no one's surprise, all the warriors ignore him and go back to their disorganized attack, and obviously they are all catapulted away 2 seconds later. Lee Tae-ho then realizes that they are all just extras. Meanwhile, White Fang, furious, goes after Lee Tae-ho. Our hero thinks that this is the only method he can think of now. He decides to use the Kalstead Saga. Then a blue aura emanates from his body. Then our hero shouts for the warrior's attack to be like a storm. Lee Tae-ho then flies towards White Fang, who breaks the whole ground where our hero was. Then, Lee Tae-ho prepares to fall and hit the wolf, who is totally lost looking for him. At that moment, Lee Tae-ho says that he needs to survive that battlefield because he wants to see Hedda again. Then, Lee Tae-ho remembers the advice Hedda gave him. Just remember this: the power to invoke a saga and develop it depends entirely on you. Well, forget all that, our hero yells, saying he needs to stop with that death flag, stop with that flashback, because the saga, the warrior's charge is like a storm, was just a movement speed boost until now. But what would happen if he developed the saga beyond a vertical leap? Lee Tae-ho then calculates that if he could kick the air and jump, he would hit the enemy. Our hero concentrates, and then kicks the air, propelling himself towards White Fang. Then, he gets closer and closer, and at high speed, he hits the enemy head-on. White Fang then staggers forward with his head covered in blood. Immediately afterwards, Lee Tae-ho becomes like Yamcha and curls up in a fetal position in a crater. Our hero is exhausted. Lee Tae-ho then emerges from the crater. Injured, he says he almost died and thanks Eden's blessing for still being alive. Lee Tae-ho gets up and observes White Fang with his sword stuck in his eye. Then he says that finally, the opportunity to finish him off is now or never. Lee Tae-ho then yells that he needs a weapon. Then, he summons the warrior's sword and charges towards White White Fang, hitting his head again. Our hero watches the beast fall to the ground amidst the debris, unable to believe he hit that monster. Meanwhile, in Asgard, a Valkyrie observes the battlefield and states that they are winning. She then moves a piece on the board to represent the defeated boss, White Fang. Then, Valkyrie Raskrid greets Odin. The Raven then says that it is Hugin who is there, not him. Then, Raskrid observes him. Hugin asks if anyone stood out. The Valkyrie takes a while to answer. Soon Hugin shouts, asking if there was no one. He agrees that it is true that they are the lowest class warriors, but even so, no one. Raskrid then states that there was one individual. Meanwhile, Lee Tae-ho gets up. The warriors then celebrate the victory and shout, "Glory to Odin!" Lee Tae-ho, holding his sword, watches everyone looking at him. Lee Tae-ho then thinks that the celebration looks familiar. Our hero then remembers when he lifted a champion's trophy. He soon thinks that that sword, Runic Fang, was once one of the most powerful swords on the server, but later became a common low-level weapon. Lee Tae-ho then wonders if he is now at that level, but soon he cheers up, stating that he wants to keep hearing the applause of the crowd. He then states that he wants to become stronger. Lee Tae-ho, the god of war, will become the best in Valhalla. Bjorn then congratulates him on the great job, saying that should have been the final scene. He says it looks like Lee Tae-ho is handling his saga better. Lee Tae-ho thanks Bjorn and Hedda. Bjorn states that creating a sword in mid-air, that was a real spectacle, but our hero says it was the first time he had seen something like that too. He then says that he thinks he can make the sword disappear and reappear whenever he wants. Soon, Bjorn tells them to start moving. Lee Tae-ho asks if they are going back already. Bjorn then replies that their objective is to retake that fortress and that, until then, they need to be positioned around there. Lee Tae-ho then wonders if he will have to sleep right there. So, Lee Tae-ho, inside a tent, yawns and states that it was a long day. He wonders how only one day has passed. Then, the next morning, Lee Tae-ho wakes up. Soon, our hero thinks about how much stronger he has become. Lee Tae-ho then invokes his saga and realizes that the synchronization rate has improved. He also gained an extra saga slot. Lee Tae-ho then wonders if he can now use two sagas at the same time. Suddenly, the red-haired warrior warns Lee Tae-ho that he has a visitor. He then wonders, surprised, why he is smiling. Then, more and more warriors approach and start smiling. Lee Tae-ho then faces the warriors standing at the door of his tent. Our hero wonders what their reaction is and why everyone has that expression. Then suddenly, Lee Tae-ho starts to feel a chill. Our hero, astonished, watches Hedda and the warriors having fun drinking around a bonfire. Hedda then calls him, "Wow, what a great story. Sorry everyone, but this is cinema, better than Record of Ragnarok."